Hello, family. I thought I would come on here and give you my opinion of how white supremacy is using Puerto Rico as a good example of population control. It's a trick, it's one of the oldest tricks in the book, and I decided to make this based on the last video I did on Puerto Rico. I got a lot of feedback, a lot of good comments. I got a lot of hate comments. And for Puerto Rico to be pretty much a mono society, supposedly, with combination of African, Tiano, Indian, and white or Spanish, um, they're really not together. They're more racially divided mentally than even we are in America, I think. It's really kind of sad, but I do appreciate all of the wonderful feedback that I've gotten from your island. A lot of you are awake and understand what's going on with this white supremacy. So I did some research and I just found out a few things. Now, white supremacy um, is currently using, and it has been for a long time, using the oldest trick in the book. And what it's called is divide and conquer. And what they're doing, they've been dividing and conquer for many years. And I'm going to give a breakdown. And now it's to the point where they're actually, I think, um, instituting population control. So, with the hurricane having just happened 2 or 3 weeks ago in Puerto Rico and the aid not being dispersed properly, I know there's a lot of aid on the main city there, but for some reason it's not being dispersed. Um, I think the federal government is not allowing it to be dispersed. I don't know if Puerto Rico's government has anything to do with it, but I know I saw a mayor of San Juan really making a lot of pleas to try to help her people in the countryside and the smaller towns. Now, this is population control. It happened in 2005 with Katrina here in America on the main island here, the main continent. It happened with Katrina, where there was a lot of African Americans that didn't receive much help. It happened in Houston, where we don't even know what happened to our black people down there. We have no idea. It's not being, it's not on the news. We don't know, how many people are still displaced. It's been a blackout. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how white supremacy functions. And I hope this will be of valuable information to you because there is a way to fight this. Um, but white supremacy is well in the midst of this propaganda of divide and conquer. That's the first part of it. And from what I can remember, starting like in the 60s, they started dividing. Now there's three parts to divide and conquer. The first part, and I'm going to just show you this so that you'll remember, is called the first part of divide and conquer on how to institute it is called pruning. Okay? First they prune your population. How did they do that in America? I can't speak on how they did it in Puerto Rico, but I'm just going to give you an example, and maybe you can apply this to your own island. So what they did in the early 60s, they started pruning our society. That's when they really started imprisoning and making laws that specifically targeted our neighborhoods and our communities to incarcerate our black men. Okay, so they pruned, and because we were a law-abiding citizens at that time, and we had our own communities, so they couldn't just pick us up off the street. So part of that pruning process was making laws that they know would affect black people more, and that's when they started incarcerating our men. How did they do that? They enacted laws, and they also enacted the welfare system. whereas they told women and children, families, first of all, they wouldn't give jobs. So when the men couldn't work, they offered the women and children welfare payments, but they told our families that there couldn't be a man in the house. So slowly but surely, the men left covertly, not really left, but they would act like they're not in the household, and the women would get the welfare benefits for her and her kids. So this left the man out basically on his own. And a lot of times when black families had fights and the women really did put the men out, the men were reduced to having to commit crimes of survival, okay? And they would be systematically incarcerated. The second step is taking what's left from pruning and fragment the societies, okay? That's number two. Fragmentation, okay? Fragmentation consists of taking the broken families and fragmenting them, and starting propaganda to pit one group of those fragments against another group, okay? Fragmenting. So what they would do, they figured out they know us better than we know ourselves. They would use color, and they would give a few light-skinned people who were lighter skinned, jobs, and the darker skins they wouldn't give jobs to. So of course, when things got really bad in the job market, the light-skinned people who had the good jobs would say, well, the black people can get jobs like we got, they're lazy, or we're just smarter than them, and which caused the black darker people to react and say, well, they think they're better than us because they got a job. Okay, that's the beginning of fragmentation. You understand? Um, and then not only did they start pitting us against color amongst ourselves, they also started um, moving us into neighborhoods where the banking system wouldn't give us loans to improve our homes or to even buy homes sometime. So our properties started going down, and we had no way to get money to improve our properties because they had redlining in the banks. And so that caused a little rift between us, because then you had, the working class blacks and the non-working or the least enfranchised blacks claiming, well, they're dirty, they don't take care of their properties, and so forth. So you see how the fragmenting takes place? And they fragmented us in more ways than one. They also fragmented us. They used the welfare system, they decentralized us, and they started integrating us, which first hap- which first helped in decentralization, so that our churches and communities were not together anymore, and so we're all out there floating amongst the white supremacists on our own, facing all of these racism and not being able to get jobs and so forth. And then, of course, the rate baiting started. So that's how they fragmented us. The third part of divide and conquer is called memorization. Okay? Memorization is the third part of divide and conquer. It's also known as dynamic programming. What does that mean? Dynamic programming means you start taking the fragments that you've created, and you start each fragment with pruning again. So it goes like this. Start with pruning, fragmentation, decentralization, with welfare, imprisonment, race baiting, and you take those each individual fragments and you start pruning them again, and you keep going down the line. And so what that causes is It takes away our power because we're so fragmented. It takes away our power. So when they kill us on the streets, we have no voice. We have no jobs to support ourselves, which causes our young men, excuse me, there's a train going by, which further causes our young men to create crimes of despair and crimes of survival, and they keep over and over. It's just a process. So that process of divide and conquer can be overcome. And it's not too late, but the idea to overcome divide and conquer is you have to have one message, you have to stick together, you have to be consistent in your community. You have to cut off the white supremacists, and the community has to deal very, very harshly with crooning. Those who betray the movement have to be dealt with in a very harsh manner. Okay? So that's just grandma telling you how to fight this thing. It's not too late, but before you know it, we'll be off the face of the earth. And one thing you do have to remember, we are worldwide as melanated people more than our enemy. We're and they're dying out, and they're trying to make us die out, and all of us who are not dying out, they're trying to inbreed with us to make our genes lesser. So if you like this video, be sure to hit subscribe, make a comment. I want your feedback, and we have to get together. The next video I do will try to be um, some ideas on how to actually fight, divide, and conquer. All right.